Hello, hi, I am Lisa. I'm the curator at the Liana Trust. So I'll just begin by first again thanking the Assam government, thanking the Assam State Biodiversity Board, Help Madras Crocodile Bank for organizing all of this so that all of us can be here and sort of have these discussions which really need to be had about the current state of snakebite in the country and the current state of snakes as well. So I'll begin with a brief introduction to the Liana Trust. So the Liana Trust was founded by Jerry Martin about 4 years ago. But as an individual, he has been working with snakes and snakebite mitigation and education for the last 30 years or so. So in order to address the different avenues, I know we spoke about a bunch of different avenues that need to be addressed to be effective in human-snake conflict mitigation. We have set up a serpentarium for venom production. This is the facility that is based in Karnataka that Jnaneshwar spoke about for regional anti-venom production, regional venom production. We also do a bunch of community outreach. So this is with educational institutions, it's with farmers, snakebite victims, bereaved families of snakebite victims. This is largely in collaboration with Humane World. And then we also do a lot of habitat restoration, beginning with the space that we are based in, which used to be like heavily agriculture land and which has now been rewilded, and we've seen a lot of very cool wildlife return. So like chevrotain, porcupines, leopards, all of that has made a comeback in the last few years. So my work is primarily involved in the serpentarium. So I know we've all spoken about how regional venom production centers are need of the hour and that are key to addressing the problem of deaths due to snakebite in the country. So we have one such serpentarium set up in Karnataka. It's the first of its kind, I believe, in India, where we have 7 different medically significant species of snakes in Karnataka. So that is the spectacled cobra, the Russell's viper, saw-scale viper, common crate. And along with these big 4, we also have the hump-nosed pit viper, king cobra, and Malabar pit viper. So we currently adhere to WHO GMPs for venom extraction and storage, as well as for housing of our snakes. So all of our snakes are housed in large bioactive enclosures, which we'll go into a little more detail a little later. We also provide venom free of cost to anti-venom manufacturers on the caveat that they maintain WHO standards of processing. So I think that's one of the big issues as well, is that WHO standards are not maintained right through from the source up until the end. And I think a bunch of people have also addressed the need for, Dr. had addressed it earlier as well, the need for good quality venom to make good quality anti-venom. So that's something that we're hoping to do. So we also provide venom free of cost not only to anti-venom manufacturers. At the moment, the only WHO certified anti-venom manufacturers premium serums. So we've just signed an MOU with them, and we'll be sending venom to them formally in the first week of next month. Alongside, we are setting standards for husbandry and captive care of animals in serpentariums, veterinary research, behavioral and ecological research, all of which is severely lacking, especially when it comes to reptiles, even more so when it comes to snakes in captivity. So when a snake is brought in, the first thing we do is a preliminary health assessment. So this is with new snakes that are wild caught. We also do these preliminary health assessments on snakes that have been in captivity. So we'll maybe do these about once a year to gauge how our current collection is doing. So the first is an external evaluation. You check for ectoparasites, so you're looking for ticks or mites, any body abnormalities. So when you palpate a snake, you can often feel fractures, you can feel cysts. You can also feel endoparasites. Some endoparasites like tapeworm will be along the skin and you will feel a bump or you will see a bump visually. Body conditions, your snake fat? Is it a little thin? You'll be able to see excess fat on the snake. You can see if its muscle tone is good. Is the skin taut? Is it not wrinkled? Wrinkle could mean dehydration. You will also see signs of fungal issues on the skin. Eyes, are your eyes bright? Oral cavity, is the oral cavity clear? Is there no mucus? And reflexes. When presented with an external stimulus, is your snake responding normally to that external stimulus? And when you place the snake on its back, is it able to right itself? So those are all like a quick external evaluation that we do on the snakes. After that, we have an internal evaluation where you check on endoparasites. So almost every wild snake that comes in has an endoparasite load. And once they're in captivity, because they're so stressed, their immune system very often will be compromised, and these endoparasites will tend to take over. And depending on the species of endoparasite it is, you could lose a snake within a few months to these endoparasites. So what we do is quarantine our snakes and put them through a round of deworming. This takes about 2.5 months. We make sure they're absolutely clear before putting them with the rest of our collection. Fecal smears, like I said, feces tell us a lot, is just a quick smear of the feces as soon as it's out. So very often we'll palpate the snake, get it out of the cloaca, smear it on a cover slip and look at it under the microscope. Based on the number of protozoans you see, you can tell how stressed the snake is in the environment. And that might not be mental stress, it also could be physical stress. If your snake is unwell, you will see a lot of protozoans in fecal smears. Blood, unfortunately, there's not much we can tell with blood yet because we don't have baseline parameters. So we don't know what ideal blood count should look like in individual species of snakes, but that's something we're hoping to establish. And for places that have the time and the money, X-rays and micro-CTs could also tell you a lot. That is not something we do at the moment. So these are images from the nematode eggs are from a fecal sample. So what we do is mix a very small amount of feces in a saturated salt solution. And the eggs, because of the density, will float to the top. And based on the type of eggs that we're seeing in the feces, these are nematodes, these are endoparasites that need to be treated almost immediately, but depending on what you're seeing, you know whether it's an endoparasite to worry about or not. And this was a blood smear that we've done from Naja. You can see the red blood cells, you can see the white blood cells as well. Unfortunately, again, it doesn't tell us too much. When it comes to housing, it depends on what your purpose is. So very often rescue centers, if you're keeping the snake for a short period of time, it's likely that your snake has come to you in a compromised state, so possibly with an injury. So then you don't want your snake to have too much going on in its enclosure. Ideally just newspaper, an absorbent pad, something like that works really well for injured snakes. But for long-term housing, for zoos, for conservation or research facilities, for a venom regional production center, what we do is try to provide bioactive enclosures that mimic the wild habitats as far as possible. So depending on the species, you will choose your substrate, temperature. You'll have snakes that tend to bask in higher temperatures. So our saw-scale vipers have a mix of both UVA and B and halogen, which is infrared light for them to choose from, versus a hump-nose pit viper, which is here, has just an infrared light, because we found when we did provide UV, they were moving away and trying to get out of the enclosures because that was just too much for them. So that depends on, like this is a rainforest species, a saw-scale viper often you find on plateaus basking in very high heat. So depending on the species, you decide what their housing is going to be. So similar goes for humidity, food and water, and any sort of furnishing that goes into the enclosures. So monitoring is a huge part of captive care. It is very mundane, but it's something that we have to do. So routine health checks where every few months, so this is for the baby snakes that we have, we take their morphometrics, so length and weights, and do a general health check to see how they're doing. We also have data loggers which measure both temperature and humidity. So the one that you see under the infrared light where this Russell's viper is basking, that told us that Russell's vipers bask at 38 to 40 degrees Celsius, and they'll be sitting there for hours. And very often you think that's way too high to provide to a snake, and that's something that we didn't provide to them for a long time. And they weren't doing well. And once we provided this really intense heat for them, they were kicking their infections a lot better, and they just started to do a lot better. Cameras, any sort of CCTV cameras, baby monitors, if you want to check on your snakes without being too invasive, this is an option. You have different types of software that can then track these behaviors. Of course, AI now can do everything even better. And measuring success. So how do you measure success? Once you're monitoring your snakes is how well are they doing? Have your snakes been doing well? So we've had some snakes, I think the oldest ones we've had are since 2019. And it's 2025 now, and they're in really good health. They've been breeding. So this is when we bred Bungarus ceruleus, our crates. We bred them this year. These are the babies that hatched. The babies are all doing well at the moment. They hatched in April. And that's a hump-nosed pit viper. So this is the second year that we're breeding hump-nosed pit vipers successfully. 2024's clutch is doing really well. They're like adult size right now and feeding fantastically. This batch is still a little young. They were born on the 30th of April. So they're getting there, but we've had no problems with them so far. So this year was a bit crazy because our Bungarus bred, the Hypnale hump-nosed pit vipers bred, the Malabar pit vipers bred, the Russells bred, and the Cobras bred. And it was a lot. So yeah, but like it was also for us to be able to measure success and say, okay, we're doing something right. Yeah. So I'll rush through the rest. And then record keeping. So very often you keep records on sheets or in apps. What we've done is had an app developed for our serpentarium, because the current apps that you have for reptiles are catered towards breeders. So we wanted an app that would be catered to the serpentarium. So we have all of our snakes, they all have individual IDs and QR codes. So under each snake you have the SVL, total length, weight, when the next feed is due, a feed interval that you can change based on your convenience, and options to log feed, any maintenance, any cleaning that was done in their enclosure, ecdysis, a good shed, breeding, health, venom extraction. And we have different users. So you can see that this snake was created by myself and assigned to Shivani, who is our assistant curator. This helps everyone keep track of changes and who's working with the snake. So in case there's any discrepancy, you can see who's entered that data and who you need to speak with to clarify anything. So this is just an example of our breeding records. So this is when we bred crates back in 2024. So that's the coding that we use is the first two letters of the scientific name and then the state that they were collected from. So that's Gonsalves ceruleus, Karnataka. So we have introduction, courtship, mating when they were separated, and then March 8th, 2025 was oviposition, which is when we saw the layings. We are also very, very mindful of causing stress to our snakes and minimizing the stress that we cause to our snakes. So every interaction with the animals has a purpose. We do not unnecessarily interact with animals for photography or just for the fun of it. That is something that we very strictly disallow at the serpentarium. And we're very careful about different signs of stress. So if you look at the saw-scale viper on the bottom picture, that is probably the image of a saw-scale viper that would come to everyone's mind. But that is a very defensive, very scared, very uncomfortable saw-scale viper. If you look at the saw-scale viper that's sitting up here, this one was just basking under a lamp, he's sitting in a plant, he's very chilled out, stress levels are low. This is what we try to ensure our snakes are, or that's their state most of the time. So to get here, there's a bunch of desensitization that we do. So routine handling so that they're not overly stressed. We don't push them to a limit where they're hissing and hooting at us. But we do handle them regularly so that they know that this is something that will happen and it's not something that will hurt them. And training, which sort of happened involuntarily, our snakes started recognizing what the feeding tongs meant. And you would see a very different reaction from our Russells vipers, from our cobras when feeding tongs were presented to them. and you knew that they recognized the object and they knew that that meant field. And that meant that we could train them to do a bunch of different activities based on what they were looking at. So what we're going to explore now is, it's a little bit out there, but can we train snakes to bite into venom receptacles? Because that will prevent us having to pin them, that will eliminate stress to the snake, that will obviously be a lot safer for us and for the snake as well in terms of damage. So that's something that we're thinking up at the moment. Hopefully that will work soon. And yeah, just the last bit now on sentience and intelligence. I strongly believe that snakes are very perceptive. They are social, because social is just the interaction between two individuals. And you see that in courtship and mating, you see it in parental care. And they may be solitary, but they're still social animals. They're interacting with each other, they're interacting with other animals in their environment. They are also extremely spatially aware, which is why when you rescue a snake and release it in a different location, that snake is going to have a tough time surviving, because it is very aware of its surroundings, of its burrows, where water is, where feed is, all of that stuff. And learning and recognition, which is just by being with them every day, you see them learn, you see them recognize different things. And I think while they can learn and recognize our patterns, I think we can also learn and recognize theirs. And I think that's the most we can do, and that will help further our interactions with snakes into something that's more positive. This, unfortunately, it is playing, hopefully. Yeah, so that is Aragon, that is our king cobra. So that is in his enclosure. It's a huge space. He's a 14.5-foot snake. And this is just what we let him do. So he has lots of space to climb. He has a stream that runs at the side. And yeah, so this is how we try and keep our snakes. Yeah, so that's all from me. And thank you for this opportunity. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.